Good morning. Welcome to The Usual Suspects. Great to have you with us on this Saturday morning from the state capitol. Gary Jordan, Derek Kam from News Service of Florida, Bob McClure from the James Madison Institute. Welcome back.
Thank you.
To both of you. Have not seen either of you in a while, but good to have you back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, you know, the news keeps providing us show after show after show, and so, I mean, depending on how we do today, I want to get to the presidential race, certainly a new poll in Florida, as it comes to the Florida primary. Syrians in Florida and around the country. The moves the governor is talking about, not just this governor, like 30 governors. Medical marijuana, open carry. I mean, we'll get to as much as we can, and I'll try and move it along.
Yeah, gift that keeps on
We'll
giving.
help.
Yeah.
We'll help you.
Okay, good, yeah. Well, let's, I mean, just for a moment, the poll that we're going to be talking about when we come back from the break, it's a 5% variable, which is, you know, pretty significant for a poll. So they're basically saying, okay, it's close. But the lead for Donald Trump in Florida is so significant that the 5% is covered easy. Anything about that? And Jeb, by the way, is in like 5th place.
In his home state.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think everything is very fluid right now with what happened in Paris. I think and the American people have a tendency to flirt with all kinds of different options this far in advance of a presidential election and before the primary season really gets rolling. I think Donald Trump is attractive because he says whatever he thinks he means.
We're going to blow them to smithereens.
Right, and he is honest in the Donald Trump way of honesty, in terms of he's very candid in the way he speaks, as opposed to most of the rest of the Republican primary candidates, as opposed to the president, as opposed to Hillary, as opposed to Bernie Sanders. Nobody wants to talk straight the way Donald Trump does. Consequently, he's very attractive to voters. But I think Paris, I think as they become more engaged, they're going to understand that you can't just say we're going to blow them to smithereens. That you can't say, you know, kind of these platitudes.
Yeah.
But he's attractive for that reason. These platitudes, these comments, these one-liners, they're not going to work when reality sets in. So I think
you're right.
voters will engage, and the dynamics of these polls will change significantly.
We've been saying that for how many months? And when was the last time we were on?
I know, I have. That's right. Still too early, though.
When we come back, you'll go first.
Okay.
And we'll do that right after this. Stay with us. Glad you're back with us on this Saturday morning. Okay, you heard him.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, we were just saying it doesn't seem like the shine has worn off that coin, the Donald Trump coin yet. And when you say he's a straight talker, I mean, I think a lot of people, Jeb Bush and most of the other candidates, if not all, don't think that saying we're going to blow them, you know, off the face of the earth, ISIS off the face of the earth, is candid talking. I mean, it's bombastic rhetoric. You can't do that. That's not presidential.
I agree.
And, you know, Gary, you were just saying that Jeb is looking more and more presidential, and that's true. He, you know, I've known him for years. We've all known him for years. He is presidential looking, but for some reason, that's not resonating with the voters. All of the money that he's been spending on TV he's not clicking.
Right.
And
Well, he hasn't spent it here in Florida yet.
Yeah.
Well, and so this poll in Florida,
there's
you're right.
20 million reserved for the Florida primary.
It's so early. It is still so early. But I would say this one thing, that we collectively are looking at Donald Trump through this lens of politics that we live and breathe every day. 90% of America doesn't do that. They don't think about politics, or they don't care about politics, or they're turned off by politics. So they are attracted to what they perceive as a straight talker.
Yeah,
That's
a real guy.
Right.
I agree with that.
I agree too.
It's easy in the face of everything that's happening to make grandiose, patently kind of ridiculous statements.
Right.
And it plays. But let's take him out of the equation for a minute. Jeb is still behind 3 other guys in Florida, including Rubio. I mean, it's not like that Trump is his problem. It's as if he just is having trouble being establishly heard above the din.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Jeb was a very divisive governor in Florida, and if you were only polling Republicans, and then you might get a different response, although that's not been the case, but maybe up in, going forward it might be. But remember what he did with the, doing away with minority preferences. He took on the teachers union, and so Democrats are very anti-Jeb, and there still are a lot of Democrats in Florida. His job is going to be to try to win over the independents, right? And so I think that those numbers that we see in Florida, I think reflect a lot of that, leftover hostility towards Jeb from a lot of Floridians.
I also think that he can't get away from his last name. I mean,
that's true.
You're living in a world that where 42% of the voters say they want to vote for Donald Trump, who is a perceived outsider. Bernie Sanders had some traction. He's faded somewhat recently, but you're looking at a Republican base that is at odds with the Republican establishment, because the base has been told, put McCain up, he's the most electable. Put Romney up, he's the most electable. And they have gotten their hats handed to them, the establishment has. And so the base is saying, you know what, we're done with you. We're looking at other options. That's why Ben Carson has kind of come to the top, although he's faded recently. That's why Donald Trump is up there. Unfortunately, if Jeb's last name were Jones or Smith, he would be in a different position than he currently is. Can he overcome it? He's got a lot of money in the bank. I actually think that this, I don't want to be macabre, but I think the tragedy in Paris can actually benefit him, because we need serious thinkers and serious-minded people. It's not an endorsement of Jeb, but it's a serious discussion, say, between Jeb and Hillary over what should be done.
Right, that is where he will be.
Donald Trump is not a
So
serious
people
man.
Well, and I think so you can say people who have had some experience, like Jeb,
There you go.
running a large state government,
Right.
and like that is easily transferable
Right.
to a presidential position, whereas running these businesses that Trump has is
Well,
not
and saying the
necessary.
things that Trump says.
Well,
Well,
It's
all right,
just
so
absurd.
I want to move this to the governor who joined governors all across the country, Republican governors all across the country.
One Democrat.
Yeah, one Democrat, I'll give you that.
New Hampshire.
Right. Well, it was New Hampshire,
Yeah.
which is, darn near socialist. But in saying that they are not going to be accepting Syrian refugees.
Yeah, Jeb was,
Our-
Scott was one of the first ones to
Yeah,
come out.
Scott jumped right out
Right.
there along with the governor of Texas. And they've had direct conversations with the White House, left those conversations unsatisfied by the answers they were getting. Although I have to wonder what kind of filter were in those answers, because I can't imagine the White House saying, as the governor said he was told, that they won't share any intelligence with the state of Florida. I mean, there's nothing about that that makes sense to me, but that's what the governor said he was told.
Right.
What's your reaction to what not just this governor, but all those governors are doing?
Well, I think if you look at...
Recognizing, and I need to give you this, that this isn't really in the purveyance of JMI.
Sure, and the James Madison Institute doesn't focus on foreign policy issues, so I'll speak personally. Let's look at the facts, okay? The facts are this, that refugees in Turkey, it's known that ISIS was embedding supposed refugees as Turkey was taking in refugees as ISIS members to do bad things in Turkey. That has also been documented in Belgium. It's also been documented in Honduras, of all places. Add to that the fact that the president said in January, remember the whole red line and the no-fly zone and all of that kind of thing, that if the Syrian government did X, we were going to enforce a bright red line. That is those are his words, not anybody else's, in a no-fly zone. It's actually, and then when the Syrian government did what they did, the president did not react. That's why we have these Syrian refugees coming over here. I don't think it's intolerant. I don't think it's bad form. Use the term you want to say, can we have a pause here just for a second to sort this out before we continue this? CIA, FBI, Homeland Security are all at odds with what the president said yesterday. None of them say that these refugees are being vetted properly before they come into the country. There is no database. There is no full vetting of them. These are the president's people saying this. And then the president turns it into a political situation yesterday when he says Republicans complain about debate moderators and 3-year-old orphans. That is juvenile and infantile, and we need to have a serious discussion about what is happening here in this country, because it's coming here. What happened in Paris is coming to America.
He is perfectly timing his comments to end at a break. So when we come back, we'll head over here. Stay with us. Okay, we're back, and this is a discussion, I think, this whole Syrian refugee discussion that everybody's having at their dinner table and trying to kind of weave through the subtleties of this issue and do whatever is possible to move the politics out of it and get to the real issue at hand, which are literally tens of thousands of people who are in isolation at the moment. So, I mean, what's your flush on it?
So I just, as the grandchild of Holocaust survivors, you know, I think maybe I have a more open arm approach personally. And this is not something that I cover other than the governor, you know, what the governor's reaction is. And so I don't have as much information about this as I probably should have. I understand that we're at risk and that these folks were affiliated, that, you know, Syria is our enemy now, right? And so we're at war, essentially. So these people are refugees of war. What do we do? What did we do when we turned away, you know, a boat full of Jews back in the day? Do we do the same thing now? And I have heard different reports. I have heard that there is a vetting system in place, and that the administration feels that it is adequate. The problem is that this is not, you know, many of these people are leaving. They don't have documentation. There's no, like you say, database where you can check to see, you know, if they really are who they say they are,
Right.
or if they've been hanging out with the bad guys. You know, so I don't know what the answer is, but there's a part of me that says, you know, do we want to turn away people who are refugees, whose own country is killing them? Do we want to do that?
Right, and let's go back to why this is happening, because I think that's important to understand. The president made a promise that he would enforce no-fly zones and that he would have safe havens for these refugees in Syria if the Syrian government crossed the bright red line, his word. He did nothing afterwards. There's no leadership currently taking place. And now we have this big issue. I have not heard anybody say we should not accept these refugees at all. What I have heard them say is, let's pause and sort through what we can do to protect the American people here, because there are documented cases, as I said, in Turkey, that, you know, with all due respect to Holocaust refugees, there was not the concern
Sure.
that they were going to infiltrate America. Yeah, they weren't terrorists.
The possibility
right.
of terrorists.
That's right.
On them.
That's right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
And there are documented cases in Turkey, Honduras, and in Belgium of them embedding within these. It's a tragic story with no good answer. I completely understand that.
My fear is that the Congress and the Republican governors and other Republicans in leadership positions are so entrenched against the president that no matter what his administration proposes, no matter what kind of a vetting system that he wants to do, that they will say no,
Right.
just to be obstreperous.
Right.
I mean, we have seen that time and time again, and that is my concern.
Well, and it'll be interesting because new Speaker Ryan has a bill before the House that would call for a pause in the Syrian refugees coming here. It will be interesting to see how many Democrats vote for Speaker Ryan's bill. I think that's a fair question.
All right, I want to move this. You know, we said at the beginning of the show, we could go down every one of these trails. Matt Gaetz's bill is moving through the legislative process for open carry, which means, and he's got sheriffs lining up saying,
Yeah.
don't do this.
I saw him yesterday.
Yeah. It seems to me that in a state that, and he'll quickly point out that there's 41 other states where there's open carry. It strikes me that we're at a real fulcrum point with where we are on those kinds of issues, because it seems to be overlapping with stand your ground and guns on campus. And we're at this tipping point where we're going to really move into a gun state or not a gun state.
What are you talking about?
What?
We already are the gunshine state. We are not at a tipping point. We're already there, Gary.
I don't know.
You don't think we're already there?
You don't think it ratchets it up with open carry, with guns on college campuses? I mean, those are significant changes.
I think, we are one of the most liberal gun law states in the country. How do you think Marion Hammer became president of the NRA? Florida was a testing ground for some of their policies. I don't think, the sheriffs have come out against stand your ground. They were ignored. I don't know what's going to happen with the open carry, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the state goes ahead and passes that. I would not be surprised.
I mean, again, you look at the geopolitical situation. What happened in Paris only gives momentum to what Matt Gaetz
Now
wants
is
to do.
clearly
That's
prime
true.
time
And
to
you-
move these things
That's
through.
right.
If
That's
where you're at.
exactly right.
And
Because
that's what Donald Trump said, right?
you even said,
Yes.
because of the gun laws, Donald Trump said, no one could protect themselves. So it clearly has momentum in the state of Florida. There's no doubt about it. It is.
I still think that because of John Thrasher being the president of Florida State University, that guns on campus is going to have a really hard time passing.
That's an
What do you
interesting.
think?
That's an interesting point. Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Medical marijuana. We're now in year 3 of the legislature promising to do something to help these families whose children are parents and everybody else who have some kind of problem that this might well help. And we seem to still be stumbling through. Is there any light at the end of that tunnel? Because it seems to me that they are reinvigorating the larger ballot question.
Well, the low THC medical marijuana, which is what they approved for people with the epilepsy and cancer, the Department of Health says that they are going to be giving out those licenses to the 5 dispensing organizations any day now. We've been hearing any day now for quite some time, but they seem to be serious about it now. In the meantime, the legislature is, Republicans are backing measures that would legalize full-fledged, I don't even know what to call it, regular
Right.
old medical, full-strength marijuana for terminally ill patients. So they have this right to Try Act they passed earlier this year that allows terminally ill patients to try experimental drugs. So they would put marijuana into that mix only for terminally ill patients. It leaves out a whole swath of patients that would be covered under the constitutional amendment, which looks like it's going on the ballot. The state is not going to argue against it as they did with the last year's.
Which is
because
big.
That is a big deal. So that means there's really no opposition. So the Supreme Court is going to decide on that.
All right, real quick.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting dynamic. You have a center-right legislature that I think really most of them don't know what to do because it goes against their very being to liberalize marijuana laws, and yet these people need real help. There's an emotional component to it, and I'm not sure they know what to do or how to handle it.
Inner voice. Okay, final few minutes after this. On the break, McClure said, "I love a good argument. When you have truth on your side, it's real easy to," which I think, it reminds me of what somebody said to me recently. I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. Which I thought was a great line. So So does the legislature get out of their way this time and put what is an emerging ballot question to rest because they actually do something this session with medical marijuana?
I don't think they do. I don't think they have the votes to go all the way and legalize medical marijuana. The tension for them is they're afraid that it's going to drive out left-leaning voters in a presidential election year. And that is something we didn't see happen last year, right? But it only lost by 2% last year. It needs 60% to win. It got 58%. So if it gets on the ballot, everyone thinks it's going to pass.
I really appreciated your inner soul argument that you talked about that legislators are going through. Do you agree that they don't overcome that they sort of give in to that other side of themselves?
I think it's an open question. I think you're right. I mean, because...
About 30 seconds.
Yeah, because you have men and women who generally would not like to see marijuana laws liberalized, and yet you have a ballot initiative that is part of the dynamic, and they're trying to blunt that coming forward in a presidential election. So it's two sides of the same coin, and they're kind of at war with themselves. Not at war, but they're struggling with themselves, because you're right. When you have people come up and say, please, 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 there is that inner voice that says we have to help these people.
I love the dynamic of you two on this show, and it's purely serendipity. I mean, I actually never, I really don't plan it. It's happened a few times, but it's a very interesting dynamic with the two of you. It's great seeing you both.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Okay, we will see you guys next week. Steve and Sean won't be here, but I will be with a very special guest, so we'll see you then.